What up, everybody? It is the first installment of the Pinwheels pregame show. I'm Mitchell Kaminsky. Thank you so much for hopping on, talking a little White Sox baseball. Just a reminder, main show, Pinwheels and Ivy, tonight, 8 o'clock. All those Fids going to be breaking down all things White Sox and Cubs from this week. A lot to talk about from both sides of town, but we're going to start with the White Sox. As you can see behind me, kind of a main focus is right about the team here at Sports Mockery, sportsmockery.com. So I was at the game on Saturday, and I'm not going to lie, that ninth inning, it kind of felt like rock bottom. But you know that they could still slump so much further. The White Sox had Crochet on the mound to start the game. So it felt like one of those games, like a rare one where you feel like you have a chance. They go down 5-0 early. That ninth inning, they have two hits. Kevin Pillar's on first base. He gets picked off. Not really meeting the FAST acronym of technically sound from one of your veterans. It shouldn't be getting picked off at any point in the game, but to get picked off in the ninth inning when you're trailing, that's a tough look. As he is taking his walk of shame back to the dugout, you hear the chants of "sell the team" from this half-empty stadium on a beautiful Saturday afternoon that should be, quite frankly, full, but I don't blame people for not wanting to watch this product. He goes back to the bench. There's chanting "sell the team." And like right there, I think for a lot of teams, especially after having your core dismantled that was supposed to be a championship team, you now do not have a top, you can't get a top 10 draft pick this year, and for what could be the worst White Sox team in history. So you're gonna have to watch through that. Not a whole lot of hope there. The former general manager was fired. Things don't look too good on the South side, but things, they feel like they can get worse. And one of the things about this team heading into the season, you knew they were going to be bad. But one of the things you heard from the team, a lot of media people, I bought into this. I was one of the people saying this. Yeah, they're going to be bad, but they should be a digestible product to watch. You're bringing in all these veterans that might be having their last chance to play in the big league. So they're going to be hungry, wanting to compete for a job. With all these young guys coming up to see what they can do, Getz was saying, hey, we got to improve the defense. We got to improve the clubhouse culture, get the vibe in the locker room better so people want to play here. And so I was thinking, like watching, like listening to this and, seeing all these guys coming in and hearing what everyone was saying, a lot of positive vibes early in spring training. Like, okay, if the defense does get better and they play clean baseball and they are hustling and it looks like they're trying, this will be, I think they will be bad, but at least it will be a watchable product. I think I overestimated the power of just how bad some of these veterans that they brought in are, quite frankly. Doesn't matter if you're hustling or playing good defense. I bought into that. I was so wrong. I was so like Paul DeJong looks lost at the plate. He's got this long loopy swing. He's struck out 16 times. You got Pillar's getting picked off at first base. Quite frankly, the defense, which was supposed to be good, it's looked terrible. It has looked terrible. They rank 17th in the majors in defense, according to Fangraphs. So that's kind of middle of the pack. That's not that bad. But I was looking at defensive runs saved, which, I think that's a better test anyway. They're 28th in the major leagues. Maldonado looks like a clown behind the plate. And that was another one that when they signed him, I thought, I was like, okay, like I like this signing. Yeah, he had a down year last year defensively, but historically, very good defensive catcher. He can handle a pitching staff well. He's not going to be able to hit, but at least with the defense, and we got all these young pitchers, he's going to help. He hasn't. The OPS, if you look at the offense too, you knew the offense was going to be bad. His OPS plus. Now, the league average is 100 for an OPS. That's an average major league player. He's in the negatives. That's hard to do. So that's why it's setting up to be a really ugly season where it's going to be a lot worse than I think even I thought, because you can have all these great veterans that are hungry and wanting to play and improving the locker room. Everyone's sick of hearing about the culture. No one gives a crap anymore. For what it's worth, I have heard from people that cover the team that the vibes in the clubhouse are a lot better. But quite frankly, no one gives a rat's ass if they're getting along if you're losing games. Like I wouldn't care if there was infighting if they're winning. No one cares about what the vibe in the clubhouse is anymore at this stage. So that's where I think the Tommy Pham signing comes in, because I think Chris Getz is panicking. He sees that this team he has put together has the chance to be one of the worst White Sox teams in baseball history. And I don't think all of that is necessarily on him, but he doesn't want to be associated with that his first year. That's why I think he brought in Mike Clevenger. That's why I think he brought in Tommy Pham. Now let's get into that Tommy Pham signing, because now we just added another veteran to this clubhouse that seemingly had no other suitors. Probably would not be on a major league team if the White Sox didn't come calling. You think it's telling that the fact that no other teams reached out to this guy that just helped the Diamondbacks get to the World Series last year. I think that was pretty telling for me. It was the same thing with Clevenger that, after a good season, no one reached out to him. Because who wants to play for the White Sox right now? Nobody. So that tells me he had no other suitors, I would imagine. I saw a report from someone from The Athletic. The Giants, who needed some outfield help, they didn't want to touch him after the whole fantasy football slapping Jock Peterson incident. I know maybe that's what this White Sox team needs is a Tommy Pham to come in there, start slapping people around and get people to wake up. But that to me was telling. I think it signals that Getz is panicking because what purpose does he serve this team at this point in the season, knowing that they're going to be bad? And I get you have some veterans and some placeholders, and you need a couple to kind of show them how to take professional at bats, but they're not taking professional at bats. The only guy that looks like he has some semblance of an approach at the plate, who's coming to the plate with a plan, is Robbie Grossman. The guy's been on the team for a week, and he already leads the team in walks. That's telling as it is. So I admit I was definitely wrong about the impact that some of these veterans they brought in were going to have because a lot of them stink. And I think Getz is panicking, and that's why he's adding Tommy Pham to the mix. But what I don't understand it from a baseball perspective, number one, at this point now, because these veterans aren't panning out, it should be about a value. See who you got. Who are your ride or die guys that you can go to battle with moving forward with some of these prospects? That's what the rest of the season should be about, evaluating talent. Tommy Pham now blocks an Oscar Colas from coming up, a Zach DeLoach from getting a look. You just added another guy that's going to prevent one of these younger kids from playing, from getting a look. So that's number one I don't get. Number two, we heard all offseason about the defense has got to get better. We got to make this place more attractive for free agent pitchers because no free agent pitchers wanted to come here. The defense has to improve. Well, who's going to be the odd man out most likely once Pham is ready to come up? Probably going to be Kevin Pillar, justifiably so. But you're looking at the two defensively, Pillar still has better defensive metrics. He had last year, he's a better defender. Pham is more of a DH type at this point, but you got injury-prone Eloy still on the team. You want to put him in the outfield? That's not going to help. The defense is still going to be bad. And now you got Eloy in the outfield. So I think you have to keep Eloy at DH. So by adding him, you're not only blocking someone else, you're making the defense worse by adding him. So that was a confusing signing from both sides. Just like, why would Pham want to play for the White Sox? Well, it's quite frankly, it's clear that he had no other options. And why the White Sox bringing it in? It's because Getz is panicking because he has the worst team in baseball. But that move didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I hope, because given his track record, it sounds like he's not afraid to shake things up in the locker room and speak his mind. So I think at the very least, there'll be some entertaining headlines that come out midway through the year. You might hear, he sounds like a guy that's pretty transparent. He's not afraid to speak his mind. So I guess at bare minimum, we might get an inside peek of what's going on inside that locker room. But going back to how this team is playing right now, Pedro Grifol had this acronym coming into the season: FAST. This White Sox team is going to play fast. And it stood for fearless, aggressive. The S was, what was the S? It was fearless, aggressive, selfless, and then technically sound. That has this team. This team hasn't really done either of them, and I think a lot of it is too. Like these veterans, I don't think they're not trying. I don't think this team's not trying. It's not for like a lack of effort, but it's hard to look like you're hustling in baseball if you're not getting on base, and none of these guys are getting on base. I think they're pressing too hard. But right now, this acronym, because it doesn't look like they're not doing any of these things right. Pedro typically, put your money where your mouth is. You're going to say this team's going to be aggressive on the base pass and all this stuff. They haven't done any of that. That acronym should be freaking awful Sox team at this point. That's what that acronym should stand for. This is where I'm concerned about Pedro, and I don't think he lasts to the end of the year. Now, I've heard some debates about this, whether it would actually do any good to fire Pedro at this point. There was a report from the Sun-Times that came out, I believe it was, that Jerry Reinsdorf knew that Pedro had put in a fireable season last year, but because of the contract, he doesn't want to pay another manager to not manage, so that's why he let him have another run. But I think at some point, like when Rick Renteria was managing this team, because we've had kind of a lack of leadership for a while now, and don't get me wrong, he was not strategically a great manager. We saw in the playoffs, there were some moves that were like maybe a little bit questionable, but you cannot argue with that he always got the most out of his players. I remember it was my first time ever going to a Sox Fest. And Ricky, this is the first year they were introducing him as a manager. And he went up to address the crowd. And he's like, yeah, this team is going to play hard each and every day and make you be proud to wear a White Sox uniform. And you know what? They weren't a very good team. They lost a lot of games. They didn't have a whole lot of talent, but he put his money where his mouth was. He held people accountable. If Avi Garcia was dogging it to first base, he let him know about it in the dugout and he benched him right afterwards. And the guys were playing hard throughout the season. That was a fun team to watch. I thought we were going to get that from this team, which we really haven't. Pedro, I don't think, like, he says all this stuff. He makes all these promises. And I bought in his first press conference when they introduced him. I was like, okay, I like what I'm no one's buying what he's selling anymore. Players, fans, media. It's embarrassing at this point. So I think that's why it's clear that there is no accountability anywhere on this team. That was very evident last year. It looked like that locker room quit on him by the end of April. This year, I mean, I still think guys are trying. I don't think this year's for a lack of effort. It's mostly just a lack of talent. Guys are clearly pressing. I think they want to do well, but they don't do any, like, they're not a very technically sound team. They're terrible on the base pass once again. So at what point do you look at the manager? And that's why I think, yeah, if you fire him halfway through the year, midway through the year, it won't change a whole lot in the win-loss column because at the end of the day, he doesn't have a lot of talent. But at least I think if you get, because you have Charlie Montoya as your dugout bench coach, so you have a perfect interim candidate to replace him, you at least shake things up and you get a guy in there that can hold people accountable. That's where I think it makes the difference right now. This team's floundering. And we got all these veterans up there. It doesn't look good. I think the rest of the year, you got to be finding out who these guys are that you can go to war with moving forward. Now, to that point, this is where we're going to let's try and look at some positives for this team. There's not a whole lot of positives, but let's try and look at the bright side because we got a long way to go in this season. So it's going to be kind of frustrating. We'll go back to Saturday. This is one of those guys that I think that has shown now you can kind of go to battle with going forward. Garrett Crochet had his first bad start in a White Sox uniform. Gives up 5 runs in the second inning. For the first time all year, it looked like he was kind of lacking command. He was nibbling around the strike zone, trying to hit his spots instead of attacking hitters. Had a couple walks in that inning. Puts up a 5 spot. Knowing the Sox offense, if you give up 2 runs, there's a good chance you're losing that game. So it would have been very easy for him to mail it in the rest of the way because his pitch count was high, just gave up 5 runs, can't get a quality start, probably going to be the losing pitcher. What impressed me so much, and this is one of the things, like, from the mental aspect of it, because baseball is a very mentally taxing game. When I used to play golf in high school, our golf coach always said, like, if you have a bad hole, I'm not going to look at that bad number on the hole. I'm always going to look at the hole afterwards to see how you responded to that situation. I think baseball is pretty similar, especially as a pitcher. A guy that doesn't have a whole lot of experience starting. I was impressed how he handled himself the rest of that start. Came out the next inning, 1-2-3 inning. Faced the minimum again in the 4th inning, got a double play, got a strikeout to get out of it, gets 2 more strikeouts when he comes out in the 5th before he left that game. That is the type of player that like I'm talking about, and this is why I want to see more young guys playing, you can build off of, and you want to be on that team once they are contending. Because it would have been very easy for him to mail it in the rest of the way or get frustrated and lose focus. And the fact that he was able to kind of recompose himself, despite not having the best stuff, battle out another 2 and 2/3 innings there, that's the type of guy you want to stick around. And I've heard some people saying, like, hey, given that he only has 2 years on his contract and he's pitching really well, his value is not going to be higher. Why don't we trade him? And I don't think you do trade him. One, because what I just said, that's the type of guy that sets an example. We always talk about leadership on this team, the lack thereof that they've had the last couple of years. And I think it's a little overrated. I'm sick of talking about the culture, but like guys that lead by example, that's the type of thing you want to see, setting the tone for not only the rest of your starters going out there and battling, just the rest of the team in general. So I like seeing that. Number 2, I don't think you trade him because you still have those 2 years, is because what was Jerry's whole thing why he picked Chris Getz, which we know is lazy. He wanted a yes man, but his thing, we want to turn this thing around quickly. Chris Getz is going to help us get in contention as quickly as possible. What is that signaling to the fan base if you're trading Garrett Crochet this year? Because you're telling everyone that you are not going to be ready to contend by 2026. That is not a good message you want to send the fan base. So I think that is why I don't think they trade him. He's a guy you want to be building around moving forward, and that's why I think keep him on the team a little moving forward. So that was nice to see. That's one of the few things. Now, but I would like to see. I was a little surprised they sent down Colas. I would have liked to see him get another look, as bad as he's been. Corey Lee, I think, with Martin Maldonado at this point, he needs to be getting more playing time. If you're going to lose games, let's at least let these young kids play, because these veterans, like I said, it's not improving anything. The defense is still terrible. The at-bats are not good. And I know they've had the injury excuse with Eloy and all of them going down, but like, man, it's a rough go of things on the offensive end. But getting to more positive, Nick Nastrini, he had his debut this week as well. And this is the one thing that is positive looking forward. If you think like looking from last year to this year, where the organization in general is in a little bit of a better spot, because they have the third ranked, one of the most improved farm systems in baseball. And the pitching depth is really there. You still got Noah Schultz in the minors. There's a lot of guys there. But Nastrini, I thought he had a very, very respectable debut. What most impressed me was his changeup. He had the best changeup based off Baseball America heading into this season. They ranked him in the organization. They ranked his changeup as the best in that organization. I think it was on full display right there. That strikeout he had with Bobby Witt Jr., his first major league strikeout, he sets him up with 4 fastballs, throws that change. That was really nice to see. And he got a pair of strikeouts on that changeup. He almost reminds me a little bit, not by body type, but the style of pitching. It's a little bit like Lucas Giolito, where he's got that good changeup, mid-90s fastball. It's not going to overpower you, but if he's locating it and you can set him up with that changeup, like he has a chance to be a top of the rotation guy. Now, one of his big things in UCLA he struggled with that the Dodgers took anyway, and this is a common theme with a lot of Sox pitchers, is there's some control issue. So that was something I was interested in watching. He did walk 2 guys, but overall, I thought it was a good start that you can build off of. I do think they have some pitching depth in this organization. We're going to see Jonathan Cannon tonight. That'll be interesting to watch. So that's encouraging. I do think the pitching depth's improved. Where they haven't improved depth-wise in this organization, which is very telling. Also, another reason I think you added Tommy Pham. How do we not have any outfield? Like, there is no depth, like position player-wise. The depth's pretty thin. And that's why I think you also added. But, like, they added all these guys in the offseason to compete for jobs. But yet none of them, even with the guys struggling, they have no one that they can call up to improve. They clearly don't trust Colas. I think his days are done. Like, the fact that they haven't called him up despite all these struggles kind of shows you they have moved on from him. But organizationally, man, you got to start. I think the pitching depth's good in the minors, and that's why the farm system improved so much. But you got to get some more positional players in there right now, because it's looking a little rough outfield depth-wise. So that is a bit concerning on that front. But it'll be interesting to see what Jonathan Cannon does moving forward. I think you give Pedro, I think you get a couple more weeks. He had a lot of things moving against him. But at this point in the season, like I was saying like earlier, if it doesn't look any better by June, just from guys with that stupid ass acronym, but like at least the fundamentals don't start improving, then I think, yeah, while it's not going to change a whole lot win-loss wise, I think you do got to can him halfway through the year, because you cannot keep having this complacent attitude. At some point, you got to start holding people accountable, and that starts with the manager. They've had a lack of leadership in that clubhouse for like the last 4 years. I think Tony came in there and he kind of just let, I guess, for lack of a better term, the inmates run the asylum, so to speak. And we saw how that fell apart really quickly. I don't think many of these guys respect Pedro. I know the fans don't respect him, that's for sure. So yeah, I think you do gotta at some point give him the axe. Now, one guy I would trade, and me and Aldo kind of talked about this a little bit last. We're going to shift a little bit of the Cubs talk. We're still sticking with the positives. 2 guys that have also been good. Jordan Leisure's been really good out of that bullpen. I think he's kind of set up. And me and Aldo talked about this last week, but he's proven that he can be a solid back end piece in a bullpen already. He's been very, very good. Lived up to the hype since coming over from the Dodgers. Kopech's also been pretty good in that 9th inning role. One guy that hasn't been good, Albert Alzolay, had another rough game last night. He's blown a couple leads already. I think he's starting to set up. I still trust Albert, but it looks like Alzolay looks more of a 7th, 8th inning guy. I think the Cubs clearly need some bullpen help, and that was very evident once again last night. And I think a Kopech trade, that would make sense for both parties involved.
The White Sox have, or the Cubs, I should say, they do have some outfield prospects. They can help restock some of that depth. They need a couple more outfielders and positional players. You trade Kopech and one of those guys, that makes sense for both parties involved, especially because one, you got Leisure who can replace him in that closer role, and you really don't need a closer with a team that's, I mean, they've won 2 games. Like, how, do you really need a closer at this point? So you're giving Leisure a chance to get some ninth inning high leverage situations. And the Cubs, you're getting some extra help in the bullpen. Aldo brought that up last week, and I think it made a lot of sense. And the more I've watched both of these teams play, it makes even more sense now. Now that Cubs offense on the flip side, that's everything I wish the White Sox offense was. They got a little bit of everything in that lineup. You know, you got some speed, they got some pop, they battle, they work good at bats. You know, they went down yesterday, and to watch that, like, they kept falling behind in that game, and you know, they didn't quit. They just kept fighting back against that Diamondbacks team, which is impressive. I would love to see that from the Sox offense, at least battling in some of these at-bats. A lot of them, the Sox look good up there. They're behind the count. They're swinging at bad pitches, you know, and just kind of going through the motions. So I think that Cubs team, man, if you just get the bullpen figured out, they're going to be good. Because the rest of that Central, not very good. I mean, you see the whole thing with the Cardinals the other day with Marmol with the security guard. I mean, like, he's a boob. He's running thing over there. I mean, I don't trust that Cardinals team at all. That starting rotation looks terrible. Lance Lynn still looks kind of washed there. So that division's ripe for the taking. And I think you can make some noise in the postseason too. But the bullpen's got to be a bit improved. That is the one Cubs observation I've seen. Now, you're talking about a guy. Now, this is the highlight of the week, I think, for the Cubs. That Nico Horner play where he tied the game in the 9th inning on a wild pitch scoring from second. That is everything that Pedro wishes that was going on with the Sox team. You're talking about aggressive and fearless baseball for that stupid FAST acronym. Nico right there. He's everything that Pedro wants from his guys, making that charge from second base. That was fun to watch. So I'm not going to lie. And I hated the Cubs for so many years. And it wasn't only so much because of their players. It's that obnoxious fan base, just that kind of, hey, let's take your shirt off in the bleachers and have a keg party out there, not actually there to watch the game. 100 years of losing, you're blaming it on a goat, ruin a man's life for catching the foul ball. So they always kind of rub me the wrong way. But you know what? Quite frankly, this Cubs team's fun to watch. They're exciting. That was a damn good baseball game last night, even though they lost. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I find myself they have a lot of likable guys on that team. So I'm going to be interested in watching them. Keeping a closer eye on the Cubs this year than I usually would. Now, finally, speaking of the Cubs, we'll wrap everything up with this. You know, you get a lot of those stupid attendance jokes that I've seen popping up because, like, you know, White Sox fans, they have that little brother syndrome a little bit. Like, it's true. We do. We know this. We're the second fiddle in town. Cubs fans like to beat up on him for the attendance thing. And I see a lot of people saying, like, oh, don't go to games anymore. You don't want to give Jerry money. Or, you know, so you can't have it both ways. It's like, why are you going to games? You're giving Jerry money. And then you also get dogged on for not having a lack of attendance. If you're a White Sox fan, I have no issue with people going to games. Because let's be honest here. The whole people, you're going to send Jerry a message by not going to games. Are you really? That's kind of what he wants. You know, the first 10 years of that stadium deal, they didn't have to pay any ticket taxes if the attendance was below, I believe it was 200 million, which they had only, or maybe it was 2 million. I'd have to look at the number again, but it was a number that they'd only surpassed once in the last decade, which was in 2022 after they're coming off that playoff season. So Jerry is incentivized by not having fans in the stands. Also, you see in Oakland, they stopped showing up when the team was bad. Did it matter? No, didn't send a message. Gave the owner exactly what he wanted. Jerry wants a new stadium. How do you think he's going to prove people that by showing, like, look, no one's showing up at this location. We got to get another location. If you enjoy going to games, go to games. I'm so sick of people lecturing other people. Oh, you can't go to games. You got to teach Jerry message. Why are you wasting money on this product? At the end of the day, baseball is one of the best games in the world, especially watching on a nice summer day. You have a beer. I mean, come on. Don't fault people for wanting to go to the ballpark. And also, that campfire milkshake, as sad as it is, that's going to be the biggest offseason acquisition. I ain't going to lie. I tried it. It's pretty damn good. It's worth your time. So quit ragging on Sox fans for wanting to go to games. If you want to go to a game, go to a game. It's not going to change anything. You're not teaching Jerry a lesson by not going. In fact, I would argue you're actually probably helping him because by having less fans in the stand, you're just helping his argument to try and milk money out of the taxpayers to get a new stadium and try and move the team. So don't buy into that. That's all I got for you. Make sure you're tuning in to Pinwheels and Ivy tonight, 8 o'clock. Although Zoe Fids going to be talking more in depth on the Cubs stuff, breaking down some of the other stuff from the Sox this week. So make sure you tune in and then come back, join us next week. Every Wednesday, we will be having Pinwheels pregame show at noon, little 20-minute, half-hour show, sharing my thoughts on baseball. So thank you to those of you tuning in now. Really appreciate it. Make sure you tune in tonight. We'll be back next week. Have a nice rest of your day.